Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of O Gaming channel. Thank you for joining me as we investigate another older game in the What Is It and Is It Worth It game review and showcase series. During the review, I will try my best to stay objective and as spoiler-free as possible as we go over the various aspects of the game, such as mechanics, graphics, and sound, as well as giving a general idea of the world the game takes place in. I won't be giving a number rating to the game as I find number rating systems to be very arbitrary considering the subjective nature of video games. Instead, I'll try my best to give enough information that you can decide for yourself if the game is worth it for you. If you are interested in a more subjective look, stay to the end of the video for my personal recommendation of if I would recommend the game, and if I actually enjoyed it with a simple yes, no, or sometimes a maybe, and a short explanation of why or why not. Have you ever thought to yourself and wondered if you and a group of survivors could make it through a zombie apocalypse? Well, lucky for you because you can play out that fantasy in the game State of Decay 2. State of Decay 2 originally released back in May of 2018, with the re-released Juggernaut edition coming out in March of 2020. The game was developed by Undead Labs and published by Xbox Game Studios. So what is State of Decay 2 and has it held up over this time? We're going to take a look at this title, going over the various aspects of the game with the intention of answering the most important question in this game review series. Is this one worth it for you? Let's get into it. Being that this is State of Decay 2, it's obviously a sequel game, releasing as a sequel to State of Decay 1. If you haven't played the original, don't worry as it really will not affect your enjoyment of this one. Nor will you miss any really key story elements as the game does a pretty good job of starting from the beginning and telling you the story along the way. Starting with the game's tutorial mission that takes place in Camp Osprey, the player will be introduced to basic concepts of the game. The tutorial begins with a couple of survivors making their way to the refugee camp 18 months after the zombie outbreak. The camp is overrun, but you attempt to scavenge supplies while fighting off the undead. Here you will be introduced to a couple more survivors, and you band together on your survival journey. From there you will play on a few different possible maps. The game released with 3 maps, Cascade Hills, Drucker County, and Meager Valley, with Providence Ridge and Trumbull Valley being added later on with the Juggernaut and Heartland updates respectively. You can also skip the tutorial and just go straight out in one of the maps, but I do recommend to begin with the tutorial at least on the first go around. From there, it's up to you to guide your survivors, choosing how to interact with communities, and ultimately attempting to complete the objectives on the map and continue on. Mechanically, we're looking at a game set in third person. There's a heavy emphasis on melee combat, but you do also have access to multiple firearms as well, and will need to make strategic use of all tools available to survive. Vehicles make great means of transportation around the map, and also serve as a weapon against the undead. As well as making use of those tools, you do have the ability to craft or scavenge things like explosives, crossbows, and more. When you begin a map, you will have 3 survivors, but will recruit more as you go. This is done in a few ways, befriending other communities, helping out lone survivors, as well as a couple of other occurrences. It's usually a good strategy to have a couple of extra survivors at the home base, just in case you lose one out while fighting, exploring, or scavenging. Death can come to your survivors either through direct combat or through getting infected, which then results in deciding whether to attempt to cure, kill, or banish them. Each survivor will have their own traits and may contribute positive or negative buffs to the community overall. Additional skills may be required for building specific upgrades to your home base, known as facilities, or for crafting specific items. When you take over a home base or home site, it will have a number of open slots depending on the size of the site. There are typically requirements such as the size of your community when deciding which home site to take over. After you take it over, you will need to scavenge materials to construct different facilities, which will allow your community a range of benefits required for survival. The facilities are specific, and you just select the slot and the type of facility. It's not like a Fallout 4, for example, where you have construction freedom, but rather upgrades in specific slots, more similar to, say, like an XCOM game. Outposts can also be taken over, which will provide an income of certain resources, sometimes food, medicine, fuel, or others. These outposts do not have additional slots and will be locked to whatever boost they provide. Graphics are okay, though don't expect a stellar experience in this category. And actually it feels maybe a little more dated than it even is. Personally, I don't find the game to be terrible graphically, though it's just not a super beautiful game either. I imagine this is largely due to the open world map and the requirements to keep track of survivors and communities, but it's hard to say. I did also encounter numerous graphical bugs and glitches. Typically, this comes in the form of enemies not rendering until you run into them with your vehicle, for instance. Though not game-breaking bugs, they are certainly frustrating to deal with, as they do happen on a semi-regular basis. The environments can also sometimes be quite frustrating. There's actually an option to force the game to unstick you from environments. When this needs to be programmed into a game as a button, it's typically a bad sign and a giveaway that the environments can have that kind of mushy effect that was prevalent in much older games, either phasing you through objects or falling out of the game space into the void. The NPCs are a little limited, but they do look okay, and the developers keep adding additional cosmetic items to dress them up and make them feel a little bit more unique. The different maps offer different landscapes, which is nice, as it will keep the game looking varied when playing in different zones. Survivors themselves are randomly generated. Think something similar to an XCOM. This is great because it's kind of a dice roll if you'll find useful, efficient characters to recruit or ones with negative traits. If you do manage to complete a map, the surviving members of your community will go into a pool, which you can then use when starting a new community, picking up to 3 of them to be veteran founders. This is a really neat feature, which will allow you to get a little more attached to your survivors, and if you lose one of your veterans, you will feel their loss a little more strongly than a fresh recruit. Scavenging and survival are part of the main gameplay aspects, and you will need to make sure your community is consistently stocked with food, medicine, building materials, and ammunition. Losing too much of one of these key resources will have consequences. So in between missions to help other communities, recruiting and clearing out the map of plague hearts, which are essentially the bosses of each zone, you'll need to make sure that you go out on scavenging missions for whatever you are running low on. The really cool thing is that this is all up to you and your own planning. The game isn't going to tell you to go to a specific spot and collect a specific resource. If you're running low on food, maybe check a convenience store. Medicine, seek out a pharmacy. Where you go and what resource you prioritize will be up to you. How is the sound in the game? Well, fairly mediocre, I would say. That's not really critique in that I don't really find there to be any outstanding sore spots. The zombies sound okay, kind of exactly how you would expect zombies to sound. Vehicles are a little odd sounding maybe, but not the worst I've heard in a game. Guns all sound fine. Basically everything here works okay, but nothing stand out, whether for good or bad.
I gotta rest.
Open your eyes, here they come.
Alright, so what game am I going to compare this one to? This is another one which will require a few different games focusing in on very specific aspects, but not a direct comparison overall. In terms of the survivors, I think XCOM is a great comparison. Random generated characters which will feel unique in their own way, but of course are a mix-up of specific options from a pool of choices, and so will be a little limited. Also, the facility construction is very similar to XCOM, allowing you to build specific facilities within open slots, limiting your creative control in base building a little in that regard, but also creating a very structured style. Other survivor builder games like Conan Exiles or 7 Days to Die can have similar vibes, needing to collect resources, manage what you have, crafting new supplies, and scavenging. The zombies themselves are probably most similar to something out of Left 4 Dead. Mostly you'll come across standard shambling zombies, but mixed in amongst their ranks will be unique special zombies. The special zombies from Left 4 Dead also felt more similar to the special zombies in State of Decay 2 than any other game that I can think of, though they're not exact copies and they have their own unique feel and flavor. In terms of the actual combat with zombies and how you deal with them, I would say I was most reminded of the Dead Rising series. Aside from that shared aspect, the games do feel quite different though. So now that we've looked at some of the features of the game, we reach the point of my review where I give a more subjective look at my personal experience with it. Please keep in mind that the following is just my opinion of the game, and if the features and genre seem interesting to you, you should definitely check it out for yourself, as not all games are for all gamers. The game that you hate might be the next gamer's all-time favorite, which is one of the things that I love about gaming. There's always something for someone out there. Did I enjoy this game, and do I recommend it?
Yep.
Yes, very much so. I did touch on some of the technical difficulties which hold this one back from being a great game, but it is still definitely a lot of fun, especially if you enjoy games in the zombie, survival, or base building genres. It's rough around the edges, it doesn't look super pretty like some of the other more modern games, and the controls can feel a little limiting and stiff, but overall it is still a very enjoyable experience. If you want a structured story-driven game that looks and performs at a AAA level, this one is likely not for you, but if you enjoy survival games, base building, and sandbox style giving you the ability to create your own stories, this is a really good choice to go with. So I hope you enjoyed this look at State of Decay 2. Have you already played the game? Let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my assessment. Also, if this review pushed you toward picking up the title or passing on it, I'd like to hear about that as well. If you're interested, I do have a Let's Play series of this game, and I've played on live stream, and links to that series will be in the description or showing on screen for you now. If this review was entertaining or helpful at all, please do give the video a like, and also consider subscribing to the channel. I post a variety of gaming content from reviews and showcases like this to bug fixes, walkthroughs, and Let's Play, and I'd love to have you join the community and help direct the future of the channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today, and until next time, take care.